Hi, Anna. Thanks for joining us today on Creva's Kick the Bucket campaign. We appreciate you joining us just to discuss a little bit about Milk Bar and the benefits of moving from bucket to bottle feeding using milk bars. I'll let you kick us off there and tell us a little bit about Milk Bar.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Eddie, for the invitation. Very delighted to spend some time with you on this. So, Milk Bar is a New Zealand company. We were founded in 92, and our whole philosophy is about working with the calf's digestive system to eliminate a lot of the problems that we see in raised calves. So, Milk Bar is not just, a calf feeder with some teats. It's actually a proven system that protects calves from the effects of fast feeding. So how does that all happen? A calf's digestive system is really geared to be drinking from a cow, and the cow lets down quite slowly. It's quite a regulated flow, and the calf has to really suckle to remove the milk from the cow's teat. The cow will let down at around 4 minutes per litre. So the calf's whole digestive system is totally designed to be drinking at around 4 minutes per litre. And because of that, we have really important digestive functions that are activated by the suckling action. So when we're raising calves artificially, let's say, if we follow those same principles, then we can reduce or eliminate most of the common problems that are directly caused by fast feeding. So things like vulnerability to illness, bloat and acidosis, nutritional diarrhea is a massive one, cross-sucking is a big problem, and also poor weight performance. So when a calf suckles with a really controlled flow, she produces a lot of saliva. And the saliva not only improves digestion, but it also improves immunity. So saliva has quite complex enzyme systems. We have lactoferrin, and we also have lactoperoxidase. And these two enzymes not only boost the calf's immunity, but they actually attack the cell wall of bacteria and prevent them from being able to multiply. So if you do have like a bug in your calf barn or your calf environment, the lactoperoxidase in the saliva actually helps protect the calf by preventing that bacteria from multiplying. So saliva also contains pregastric lipase, and this enzyme is really important for the digestion of fats. So the breakdown of fats to energy actually starts in the mouth with the contact with the lipase in the saliva. Okay. So saliva also contains pregastric lipase, and this enzyme actually starts the breakdown of fat to energy as soon as the calf starts suckling and producing that saliva. So the digestion of fats starts here, and if the calf isn't producing saliva, for example, in a bucket system, there is no saliva produced, then the calf can't actually process and digest the fats that we're trying to utilize to increase daily weight gains. So how can we protect our calves from bloat and acidosis? So these two things are primarily caused by milk entering the rumen. So the esophageal groove, which is at the base of the esophagus, is responsible for protecting the rumen, and it directs the milk from the esophagus into the abomasum. So when the calf suckles from a teat or from a cow, it triggers the reflex for the esophageal groove muscles to tighten and close. And it forms a small channel which then guides the milk from the esophagus through into the abomasum. When the esophageal groove malfunctions, which can be through fast flow nipples or bucket feeding, milk enters the rumen and it undergoes a bacterial fermentation and a breakdown which produces excess gas, and that's what we see as bloat. And it also produces volatile fatty acids, which is what we see as acidosis. So bloat and acidosis are caused primarily by the esophageal groove failing and allowing milk to enter into the rumen. So how can we protect our calves from nutritional diarrhea? This is a battle for farms all around the world, and it is something that is so common that it's almost thought of as being normal. But the primary cause for nutritional diarrhea is actually excess sugar and lactose and nutrients entering into the intestines. So to protect calves from this, it's really essential that they produce a thick saliva when they're drinking, which balances the pH and improves lactose absorption. When we can improve the absorption of lactose and nutrients, then we can reduce an energy source, which then enters into the intestines and becomes a food source for bacteria to grow and to multiply. So saliva is alkali with a pH of around 8.2, and milk has a pH of around 6.7. But before feeding, the abomasum is very acidic with a pH of around 2. So when the calf drinks the milk, or drinks correctly, the milk and the saliva mix, and they make a really alkali mixture of around 7.5. And then this alkali solution hits the acid in the abomasum, and it then forms a thick, creamy curd. And then from that curd, the lactose and nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream. So when we have this really good absorption of nutrients, it protects the calves from nutritional diarrhea by reducing the amount of lactose or sugars that are in the intestines. So these images here were taken from a peer-reviewed and published research paper, and this was 2 hours after feeding, and you can see clearly the difference between the two feeding systems. So on the left here we have the contents of the abomasum from a milk bar teat. There was only 3 milligrams per gram of lactose remaining in the abomasum, and there was none in the hindgut at all. You can also see on the photo that the abomasum wall is very pink and healthy tissue. So that whole environment, the acid has been balanced by the alkali saliva. On the fast flow teat, you can see there's a lot of inflammation on the abomasum wall, and there's no correct curding. So it's just sort of lumps of coagulated milk, which are just bobbing around in quite an acidic solution. Very high levels of lactose remaining in the abomasum, 12 milligrams per gram. And also there was high levels of lactose throughout the entire hindgut, so intestine, all the way through to the rectum. It's this is the front runner for creating a nutritional diarrhea. So cross-suckling. You know, there's a big shift towards pairing or buddying calves from day one, and or grouping them into larger groups until weaning. A problem with this is if calves are fed from a bucket or from a fast flow teat, then their suckling instinct is not satisfied and they cross-suck. So as part of a survival mechanism, calves are wired to suckle for a certain period of time. The brain thinks that the calf is drinking from a cow and that they're going to have that really slow 4-minute per litre letdown. So that's called the suckling instinct. In the brain, they work in synergy and they communicate with each other. And so when the calf has been drinking for a period of time, the gut sends messages or neurological feedback to tell the calf, okay, you've been drinking for a long enough period of time now, you can stop. So cross-sucking is directly linked to drinking speed. And so if you're feeding a calf through a bucket system or a fast flow nipple, the calf drinks too quickly, so that whole gut-brain communication fails. So the milk is finished, but the brain is telling her you need to keep sucking. So then that presents as cross-sucking. So they'll suck on other calves, they suck on their surroundings. It's something that is really, really preventable, and it is something that really protects those calves, because when they cross-suck on their developing udders and on the developing mammary glands, they cause long-term damage. So cross-suckling will remove the keratin plug, and that keratin plug is what seals and protects the teat canal from any bugs that are around. So cross-sucking is also directly linked to first lactation mastitis and blind quarters. So it's really essential that we protect the calves from this damage.
So we definitely see a trend in the Middle East of calves being paired from my time working in Saudi Arabia. And then Noel and I have travelled to a couple of farms, and a lot of them are bucket feeding calves. And then as well as that, they're trying to get the added benefit of weight gain and the competition for feed in bucket feeding calves on top of pairing them together. Is there any advice you'd give to a farmer seeing early signs of this cross-suckling calves?
Yes, 100%. So a lot of times cross-suckling will go a little bit unnoticed because they'll go down the line, they'll put the milk in, and then actually they leave and they may not even notice it. I would really encourage the farms to just observe the behaviour of the calves after they've been feeding. Bucket will feed them very quickly, and cross-suckling and paired calves with buckets is almost a guaranteed, it's a guaranteed outcome. The calves are not doing it on purpose. It's a brain thing that they cannot stop. So definitely they would need to move to a control flow nipple system, which is absolutely proven to either eliminate or greatly reduce cross-sucking.
Yeah. That's perfect, Anna. Sorry to interrupt your flow there.
Please do. It's good. Okay. So feeding systems. So we have different feeding systems that are commonly used, and bucket feeding is one of them. So the ruminant's digestive system operates in different ways, and it depends on the head position and the foods that are being ingested. So when the head is lowered for drinking water or eating forage, the esophageal groove remains open. Those foods need to go into the rumen. So the esophageal groove, those muscles stay relaxed and open, and then they can go into the rumen and not into the abomasum. So when a calf drinks from a bucket, the milk is primarily directed to the rumen, and then it overflows into the abomasum. Because the calves gulp the milk very quickly, like sometimes they can drink a litre in less than a minute, there's absolutely no saliva being produced. With no saliva, the pH in the abomasum is not balanced, and so the curding isn't sufficient. And then we end it up with uncurdled raw milk entering the intestines, and that's when E. coli numbers multiply rapidly, and we see the very common nutritional diarrhea. There's really high levels of hyperactive behaviour and non-nutritive sucking or cross-sucking. It would be cross-sucking if they were in a pair, but in individually raised calves, you can see this behaviour on the rails and on their surroundings. Bucket feeding calves in pairs or groups is really unadvisable.
So Anna, in the current system where a farmer is used to feeding calves at a certain speed and used to the calves being finished drinking their milk so they can begin the cleanup process or the next job, how do you find that mindset shift in moving from a quick feeding system to a slow feeding system? Is that a difficult mindset change for farmers?
It certainly can be, because it's, our human psychology is get it done fast, get on to the next thing. However, with feeding calves, that is the one thing that ends up taking you more time. So it takes time to feed a calf, to raise a calf. And the farms need to kind of decide where they want to spend that time. So they can either feed their calves in a very fast flow system like this, and then they spend their time managing the calves, so dealing with nutritional diarrhea, respiratory problems, poor weight growth, which then impacts first lactation performance and those things, so they can spend their time there, or they can allow the calf to suckle at nature's speed, spend their time there, and then they don't have to worry about spending the time on the man-made problems. So it's a balancing act. And in terms of then setting the farms up to facilitate a controlled flow, there's really very easy steps that we can help with that will allow an efficient system that allows the calves to suckle and reduces all that calf management. So it's about setting up the calf facility in a way that allows the workers to get their job done efficiently, but also allows the calf to be healthy.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, so a fast flow bottle nipple also affects the way that the calf drinks and therefore affects the digestive health of the calf. So bottle nipples are a very simple design, and there's no technology built into them to really activate the suckling action that the calves need for good digestive health. They don't suckle their teat, they just bite it or squeeze it. And sometimes it's very common to see the end of the teat might have even been cut with a knife to make it go even faster. We see that a lot. So the calf, she's not suckling properly, and the milk enters at very high speed, often 1 minute per litre or per quart. So this video here, you can see the calves start drinking. You can see that there's no saliva being produced. And then what's interesting is when you actually observe the behaviour of the calves, for the next 8 or 9 minutes afterwards, they are displaying, once again, this hyperactive cross-sucking activity. What we know is that when you see this sort of behaviour in your calves, nutritional diarrhea is only a few days away. So this is the first sign that your calves are drinking too quickly. Again, this makes pairing calves quite difficult because when they're drinking too quickly, they then try and cross-suck on each other. Because there's not enough saliva produced, it prevents, once again, the proper curd formation. So then, once again, raw milk is pushed into the intestines where it becomes a food source for E. coli. So all of our milk bar teats are engineered to work in harmony with the digestive system, and therefore we can protect the calves from the common problems that are caused by fast feeding. So all of our teats are designed, it's a combination of design and the very specific rubber formulation that we use that really activates the suckling action that the calves need for proper saliva production. So the web and the rubber formulation of the teat controls the flow to sort of 3 to 4 minutes per litre. So this controlled flow and the wonderful saliva production, they protect the calves from nutritional diarrhea. The whole system is balanced. When we have a controlled milk flow, the calves' digestive, their functions work properly. And then we get really increased daily gains. Now, this is really important for future production. If you are raising your replacement heifers, you really need them to be gaining as much pre-weaning weight as possible. So pre-weaning average daily gain has a really significant and positive impact on first lactation performance. So every 100 grams of pre-weaning weight was associated with 85 to 113 kilos more milk during the first lactation. So that's money in the bank right there.
So Anna, obviously if someone is going to go from bucket feeding to bottle feeding or using a conventional nipple and going to milk bar, there's some costs associated with that. But then as we can see in your slide here, there's some benefits in the first lactation.
Yes, that's right. So because our teats really control the flow and activate the correct suckling action, the calf's digestive processes, they function properly. And then this leads to higher average daily gains. So we see this all around the world, and there is significant advantages to increasing average daily gain. So the amount of weight that the calves gain pre-weaning directly impacts their first lactation performance. Every 100 grams is associated with sort of 85 to 111 kilos of milk more during that first lactation. So that's money in the bank. The benefit with paired calves is because there's no cross-suckling damage, we're eliminating the blind, heifers with a blind quarter that come into the herd. I mean, that's a quarter of production that's gone. So what we see typically weight difference is between a fast flow and a milk bar teat. We will see an increase of normally between 10 and 14% in average daily gain. Between bucket feeding and milk bar, it's between 16 and 24% difference in average daily gain. That is really significant when you are wanting to have a high-performing production herd. So the controlled flow satisfies the suckling instinct. Calves are calm and content after feeding. So this really also then gives the farms an opportunity to think about how they want to set up their calf operation. Pairing calves is wonderful. They may want to have the freedom to choose to go into larger pens, group hutches with a group of 5 or 6 calves. When you reduce the cross-suckling damage, you are now able to decide the best course of action for your farm and not be sort of trapped in the traditional way of raising the calves because of the cross-sucking damage. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Good.
And so we can see in that video, we might just go back to it for a second. So Anna, we can see in that video there the kind of relaxed nature of the calves after they've been satisfied by the correct suckling action, and I suppose exerting energy on the suckling so that they're relaxed and ready to rest after their feed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's all about allowing them the time to suckle and for that suckling instinct to be satisfied and for the gut and the brain to communicate correctly. So when that all works properly, then this is what it looks like. And also the calf environment is totally quiet. The calves are very relaxed. You shouldn't hear anything. It should just be calm. When they're in this position like this, you know that they've been drinking at the right speed. You know they've produced enough saliva, which means you know that the curding is happening correctly. When the curding's happening correctly, you know that you're protecting them from nutritional diarrhea. So if you're seeing any sort of agitated behavior after sucking, you know that you're going to have a problem. So saliva is free and it is nature's liquid gold, really. So if you can feed your calves in a system that really facilitates saliva production, it becomes possible to pair or group calves earlier, which then also reduces time and labour for the farm. So how to use the milk bar system. Milk bar basically adapts to any system and any climate that the farm is in. So quite common, and I believe this is very common practice in the Middle East, is individual to weaning. So in this system, the calf is in a single hutch from birth to weaning. And again, in this environment, the common problems that we see are diarrhea, poor weight performance. So it's really crucial to manage the calves' drinking speed from birth to weaning. So we have a couple of solutions for calves that are in a single hutch environment. So for the bottle systems, we have the Milk Bar Revolution Snap-on nipple. This is the most technologically advanced nipple on the market. And basically it has 5 slits which are positioned on the circle, and each slit is controlled by a web. So this is a real game changer for farms that are using bottle systems because it really controls the flow and activates the correct suckling action, which then activates saliva production. So we always recommend that the calves are in like a process. The whole rest of the farm always has processes and protocols, except normally for the calves. The calves are kind of just left a bit to their own devices. So we recommend that you would have a training period. And this would be a little bit influenced by climate. In a hot market, we would say allow the calves to be on the training nipple for maybe 5 days. When it's more ambient time of the year, you can cut that down to probably 3 days. What's really crucial at this really vulnerable stage of a calf's life is that she suckles correctly. So our human mind says, let's just get the milk in quick, quick, quick. Let's take a nipple and get a knife and chop the end off it and basically just dunk the milk down the calf. The problem with that is that with the colostrum, they have the natural IgG that they are getting, the passive immunity from the colostrum. But when you're putting colostrum into the calf with no saliva, they're only getting 1/2 of the immunity protection. So what we really want is we want them to have the passive immunity from the IgG, and we also want them to have the lactoferrin and the lactoperoxidase, which is present in the saliva. And that way you are giving your calves the best opportunity to be as healthy as they can be. Healthy calves cost less. So that's really just the crux of it.
Sorry. So Anna, just on this train and teach, so you reckon 5 days just to allow the calves' jaw muscles to build up to get used to the sucking action before moving it on to onto the Revolution teat?
Yeah, it's about allowing the calf to become as robust as possible while still respecting the physiology of the digestive system. So particularly in a hot climate, the firmer black milk bar nipple, it could be a little bit difficult for the calves to be, because they're under a little bit of heat stress. So that's why we've designed this, just specifically formulated to still activate the suckling action so that they produce the saliva, but it's also a little bit softer. So it allows them to drink at a slightly faster flow than the black one would.
Yeah.
Why we're really keen about the calves producing a lot of saliva at this stage is for the immunity, because otherwise they're getting the IgG from the colostrum, but they're not getting the really essential support from lactoferrin and lactoperoxidase. Your poor video guy is going to be like, oh my God, what's she? So, then when the calves are drinking really strongly, then we would shift them onto the firmer black Revolution nipple. So this nipple is just it's a game changer for bottle farms. There's significant reductions in nutritional diarrhea or scourings, significant reduced respiratory problems, and normally plus 12% increase in average daily gains. So how do we manage a control flow system on a farm that's used to a fast flow system? So the first key thing is to make sure you have enough equipment. So the Revolution nipple allows the calf to suckle at the correct natural speed. So if you're feeding 3 litres, that's 9 to 12 minutes. If you're feeding 4 litres, it's 12 to 16 minutes. You're having to wait for the calves to finish drinking so that you can reuse the bottles for the next run. You don't have enough bottles. So the key thing is to make sure you have enough bottles to keep the delivery smooth whilst allowing the calves to have the proper drinking speed. So this is really just a simple management change, and it saves hours of calf management and intervention. The next thing that we need to consider is to manage the age of the nipples. So the Revolution nipple will control the flow for around 140 feeds. So in a bottle system, it's a little more complicated to sort of determine the age of the nipples, and often it'll be when it's completely destroyed that someone will look at it and say, oh yeah, we should probably change that. The best practice is to adopt a all-in, all-out system. So you would diarize all the nipples arrive, for example, on the 1st of the month. All the old ones go out, all the new ones go onto the bottles. Then you will calculate how many feeds per day per nipple. So some farms will have enough gear, like they'll have enough bottles and nipples that they basically are just being used twice a day. Some farms will rotate the bottles and the nipples, so they might run out 2 or 3 times during each feeding. So basically, if you calculate how many times per day that nipple's used, and then divide it by 140 feeds, and then that will tell you how long that nipple will control the flow for. When you know that, then you just diarize it, put it in the farm diary, replace the nipples. So if you're using them twice a day, you replace them every 10 weeks. If you're using them 3 times, 7 weeks, etc. Then there's no mistakes, because otherwise what will happen is that the nipple will still look all right, the calves will still look all right, but then once that speed is increasing, then we start to see the problems of diarrhea, cross-sucking start to come back into the calf barn. So these really quite simple things protect the calves from all of that back-end management that you're having to do. And then cleaning, it just slots in with your farm's current hygiene protocols. So just to rinse using a non-chlorinated detergent at least twice a week, or whatever your farm protocol is, it doesn't matter. The rubber is very resilient. It can handle high heat. It can handle detergents, but it does not like chlorine. So chlorine and rubber are not very good friends, and the chlorine basically strips all the natural oils out of the rubber and makes it brittle, causes little cracks on the surface of the teat, and then that stops the teat from bouncing properly. And then when you stop it bouncing properly, then they start to leak. So using chlorine will reduce the nipple life by 60%. So it's quite important to have a chat to your, your chemical representative. They will be able to give you some really good non-chlorinated options that will still do the job that you need it to do. So individual to weaning, using single feeders. So if you've already got a milk delivery system, like a tanker with a pump and a hose and a flow meter and all of that sort of thing, then switching out from buckets to milk bar single feeders is really simple. You've already got the infrastructure. So we've got 6 different sizes and hook types, so we can adapt to any farm and climate situation. So again, with the single feeders, we start with the training phase. So you would probably have, what we would recommend is that you would have a number of single feeders that are permanently fitted with a yellow training teat. And these teats are your training feeders.
So this would be quite an easy shift for a farm at large scale looking to move from bucket to teat feeding without the huge investment of bottles and trailers and different equipment. So they can kind of make the easy transition to this type of feeding, maintaining their same hygiene standards. They're still feeding calves and singles. They're still using their own equipment, but now they're getting the added benefit of the teat feeding.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For farms that are already using a bucket system, they will normally have their own milk delivery already set up. And so all it is a matter of doing is shifting from filling a bucket to filling a feeder. But the health benefits for the calf are just immeasurable. So it's a really easy switch. So like the Revolution, we always recommend that the calves start in a training phase. So the milk bar training teat is, again, specifically formulated to really activate the correct suckling action, and it supports those new calves at a really vulnerable time. We would recommend that the farm would have a number of single feeders that are fitted with the yellow training teats, and those are their training feeders. The calves come into the barn, they are fed with that feeder with a training teat for a couple of days or until they're really looking quite strong and ready to move on to the black. So the milk bar teat, again, specifically designed to control the flow. And this teat really does the job for you. Is a really amazing solution to prevent all of these problems that the farms are having to deal with. Again, setting up the farm is really crucial. There's no point spending a load of money on building all new infrastructure and then not having enough calf feeders. So again, if your team are having to wait for the calf to finish drinking before you move to the next pen, it's totally inefficient. Same period of time, 3 litres, 9 to 12 minutes, 4 litres, 12 to 16. This farm actually shifted. This was a bucket feeding farm. This is the largest farm in Europe. And we went in and set up a run of 100 calves for them, and they immediately saw the benefits. So this farm was using all their existing infrastructure, and then they just use a Milk Bar 1 Easy Lock.
Yeah.
This is a feeder that we would really recommend for large operations because of the hooking system allows the feeder to stay with the calves, and then you can just flip it out upside down after feeding. So this farm saves 60% of daily time by just simply shifting from bucket feeding to the milk bar system. And that time was primarily saved through intervention with sick calves. So again, it's about managing the teats. But milk bar is a system, and systems need protocols. So make sure every hutch has its own feeder. If you don't have enough feeders and you're swapping feeders between calves, you really have no control over the drinking speed. And a young calf might be getting an old worn teat that is drinking too quickly. So it's really about managing this front end of the calf so that you don't have to spend time managing the problems afterwards. So for a new calf, you would fit a new milk bar teat to your single feeder. You would either use a number system or a colour code system. It really doesn't matter. But that feeder and that calf stay together until weaning. Then when that calf is weaned, the old teat goes out, new teat comes in, and it all starts again. And that way there's no mistakes. Mistakes lead to sick calves. Again, cleaning. Bar teats, we use a pull-through design, and it's a really tight connection point, which means that it's very hygienic. The teats don't need to be replaced for cleaning, so it's just a rinse after use, and then using a non-chlorinated detergent according to your farm's hygiene protocol. Another really popular system that we see quite a lot of is taking a single calf and then transitioning it to a group. So grouping calves has really well documented calf health improvements, and it's also a big time saver. So once again, the key to this is to control the age of the teat. So we have a follow the teat system, which allows farms of all sizes, from like a couple of hundred cows up to 5,000 cows, to successfully make groups of calves who will be drinking at a similar speed and controlling the speed from birth to weaning. So we do that by basically starting off new calf, new teat. So in the single feeders, the calf has a new milk bar teat inserted into it. Then when you've got enough calves to make a group, or you might, some farms will make it every 2 weeks of age, they put them into a group, or might be 3 weeks of age, they put them into a group. That's a conversation the farm needs to have with their team about what's the most efficient way of doing it. So when there's enough calves, then you basically just remove those new teats from their single feeders, and you then install them into a group feeder of your choice. It could be 2s, it could be 4s, it doesn't really matter. That means that then these groups of calves, who are all within a 2-week age period, they are all feeding from a teat that is the same age as them, basically. Again, if you're swapping feeders from pen to pen, then you have no control, and we really need to manage that whole process to prevent the health problems. So this farm is a 2,500 cow farm. They also went from a bucket system to singles and then to groups. And again, they used to have a huge team of calf workers, and now there's 2 guys that just run through the whole lot, and it's efficient. The calves look wonderful. Their average daily gains are through the roof.
So for the likes of that farm, Anna, they brought in the milk bar system, and although it might have been a bit of a mindset shift to go away from bucket feeding calves and the speed that they were getting through their tasks at, they were able to redeploy a little bit of staff to other jobs.
Exactly.
And although they were spending maybe a little bit of more time feeding throughout the day, they had less issues and problems to deal with, and they were able to focus on their animal husbandry tasks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's always a bit of a pushback from the workers because no one likes change. And so the workers are always a bit resistant to changing a system that they know really well. But what we will commonly do is say, look, just do a little pilot trial. And then it doesn't cost you anything really. You just set up a run of 30 or 40 calves or whatever, and the calves will basically tell you everything you need to know. As soon as the calves go from a bucket onto a milk bar teat, within 2 days, you'll see instant improvements in the calf health. When the workers see that, they're immediately on board with it. And then this farm, all that they did was they removed some of the hutches because they were all in singles, and then they just made groups for their 10 teat feeders. And then the group of staff that were responsible for managing the calves and having to dealing with all the sick calves all the time, they were then, as you say, deployed to do other things on the farm. So if you are raising healthy calves, you don't need such large numbers of people.
Yeah.
What's important when you are grouping calves is to make sure that you have them as close in age as possible, maximum 2 weeks. Also, if you've got, some farms will have a few different breeds within the herd. If you've got different sort of size calves, always lump the calves of a similar size together. Bigger calves need more milk. The old fashioned sort of 10% of milk per day is out the window. Now the recommendation is more like 20% of weight per day. So that means bigger calves need more milk. So if you've got mixed stages or mixed sizes, then the little calves will do super well, but the bigger calves won't do as well as they should. So this farm is a 5,000 cow farm, and this is the farm we spoke of before that switched from bucket feeding into milk bar. They start in single hutches for 2 weeks, and then they transition into the groups. So this farm has like 100 plus calves per week coming on into the farm, and there's 2 ladies that run the whole operation. They've had a 70% reduction in diarrhea, 60% reduction in time, and a 16% weight increase in their calves. So the system switch actually paid itself in less than a year because the improvements in the calves and the time and everything was just so significant.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work in the US and in Canada that show really significant improvements in feed uptake and cognitive development of calves that are raised in pairs. The animal stress is reduced. So when you reduce the cortisol levels in the calves, then they have a much stronger immunity. If you've got a stressed calf, they are way more vulnerable to, a sudden weather event or any bugs that might be lurking around. And it saves time. So it's the group effect, basically. So this was a really interesting study that was done in Poland last year. And they were measuring 3 groups of calves. So group A was a fast flow teat and calves in a single bucket. Weight per day, 618 grams. So that would be, we see that quite a lot. It's not at all suitable for raising a future production animal. Then group B was a milk bar teat in a single hutch to weaning. And those calves were gaining 830 grams per day. And then group C was a milk bar teat in a group of 6, and those calves, 925 grams per day. So this is all done at the same time. So the weather was the same, the environment was the same amount of milk, but grouping calves always gives them that little bit of performance extra. And the reason for that is because they have more feed aggression, and they also copy each other. So if one of them starts eating some grain, then the others will come and start eating some grain. They eat more, they drink more, they move more. And that's also important to develop a good, muscular and skeletal robustness. So training calves together also can accelerate the process because they do learn and copy from each other. So these calves are having their first feed. This is a milk bar 5 compartment feeder. And after a couple of minutes, they've all got the hang of it. So normally we would typically see calves in a group by the time they've had their 3rd feed. They know what the feeder is, they know where the milk is, and they just come immediately to the front. After a couple of days, when the calves are, really looking for the feeder, then you can put them onto the milk bar teat, and you would insert those new teats into whatever feeder. It doesn't matter. It can be a 2-teat feeder, a 6-teat feeder. It really doesn't matter. The important thing is that they're sucking at the correct speed. That feeder with those teats then stays with those calves until weaning. So the size of the group really is irrelevant. The teat does the work, and then that allows you to decide what is going to be the most effective and efficient thing for your farm, whether it be pairing calves or larger groups. A couple of little tips to also consider is what bottles do you use to train the calves, or how are you training the calves? A lot of bottles don't have a handle, and they're a little bit difficult to manage. So we have a training bottle that is really well balanced. It's fitted with a training teat. It has an air vent in it. And what it basically does is it just reduces the user fatigue, because it's quite hard work bending over a calf to train it. So by using this bottle, it's just balanced, and it's just easier for the calf people to be able to manage. The second thing is teat height. So when you're making a shift from buckets to a nipple system, you need to make sure that the teat is around 60 centimetres from the ground, and that helps the calf to adopt the natural position and to prevent milk from entering the airways.
I suppose on that last one, So the same as that, Anna, you're trying to replicate as much natural behavior as possible. So trying to match what height the calf's mouth would be at in compared to the cow's teeth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's all about trying to replicate nature as closely as possible without, so that the calf can just develop in a natural way. When the teat is too high, and sometimes we see it where as the calves get older, the farm will raise the feeders to make them higher. But actually the calves, they just spread their legs. The cows don't grow taller as the calves get older.
Yeah.
They need to have that really good neck curvature there, which protects the airways from milk aspiration. During the airways, you can have problems with respiratory infections and things like that. And the final thing is, you might be thinking, oh, I want to have groups of 6 in a group hutch, but sometimes I might only have 4 or 5 calves. I don't want to waste a teat. So simple things like just blanking off a teat hole will allow you to still group of different sizes without wasting a teat. I lied when I said the actual final thing. Another really interesting solution that we have for water is our pen waterer. So it's a very unique design, and what it does is it protects the water content from straw, dust, bird droppings. It really keeps the water clean without having to go every day and fill water and clean water buckets. So in terms of saving time, it's all these little things that add up to make a really efficient calf rearing operation. And so that is my ending, I guess.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Anna. It was great to hear from you again. I suppose I've heard the story of Milk Bar now a couple of times, and I can definitely see how it could benefit farms. And I suppose a lot of farms now are just trying to tweak some of the things that they're already doing and maybe improving things without getting any bigger or with huge investments. So I think Milk Bar could really be a solution for a lot of farms.
Yeah, it's something that people don't really, until you see it with your own eyes, it's quite difficult to understand the massive impact it has on the farm by improving the calves, by just simply changing how they drink. And so we would always really encourage a farm before they go and spend a whole lot on a whole new system, just try it. Try it. Within a week, you will see the difference.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thanks for that, Anna. Thanks for hopping on, and we'll talk again soon.
Lovely to see you, Eddie. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So yeah, Anna, we see a farm here that you were working with, 5,000 cow farm. They made a small few tweaks to their system and they've seen really strong results. And was there much, from the workers' point of view, did they see a change straight away, or were they a bit resilient in changing their system?
Yeah, for sure. So the workers were not very enthusiastic about changing from buckets to a teat system. It's quite normal. So what we did is we just did a small test of about 50 calves, and within a couple of days the workers could really see the difference. The calves, it's amazing how quickly they bounce back from being quite poor digestive health to good digestive health. The immediate difference, like the coats look good, the eyes are bright, they're a lot more energetic. And so then this farm was able to, instead of having such a labour-intensive calf operation, they were able to then redeploy staff onto other parts of the farm, and then they just have a couple of ladies that run the calves.
Okay.
So, yeah, really significant cost cutting though, because if you're having to treat a lot of calves for nutritional diarrhea, that's time and that's money. Electrolytes, every day that they have electrolytes and not milk, that then impacts first lactation production. So all these things that are happening to the calves in this early phase are affecting their ability to really fulfill their genetic potential. We want them to be able to produce as much milk as possible for as long as possible. And the way to do that is to build the building blocks of good health. They start here. Yeah. If we can reduce the time and improve the animal health, then the whole system pays for itself within a very short time.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks for that, Anna.
You're very welcome.